I just read a statistic that in New York, someone gets stabbed every 52 seconds. How the fuck is he still alive?
Grab a chair, mess you with, this is down. It's my podcast. This guy's insane. Rock your brain. It's just a sound. A Steve here out.
Hey, as promised, a brand new Vieira Vault 1 week after the reboot. And I haven't checked the comments and stuff. I will do that. And if there is any, I'll tack it on at the end of this. But this episode's really cool. The Nazareth Discography with the author of Razama-Snaz, Robert Lawson, a big fan of Nazareth. And I'm a little guilty of not being well-versed in all that's Nazareth, even though I love what I have and heard. But Robert's going to talk to us about the ones I know and the ones I don't know. So it's a pretty long one. So, hey, let's get into it. Here it is. My interview with Robert Lawson, the Nazareth Discography. Hit it! I have right here, let me reach for the book, because I bought a copy of the book. It's called Razama-Snaz, the Listener's Guide to Nazareth. And I have the author of that book and a returning guest on the Vieira Vault, Mr. Robert Lawson. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Ralph. Great to talk to you again.
Likewise, dude. So here's the thing, dude. I am a little ashamed to say this, but I should be more on top of Nazareth than I am. But I brought out my whole Nazareth collection. I brought it out here. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to discuss the Nazareth Discography. Now, I don't own all the albums, but the ones I own, some I know real well, some I don't. I don't listen to as much. And just this past week, Robert, I went to one of those record store, what do they call them? Record store shows where, people rent tables for $30 and a bunch of people with used vinyls come, and I always go to those things. And I ended up picking up the first Nazareth album, which I heard for the first time right now. I just heard it for the first time. I bought Malice in Wonderland, which I owned the 8-track when I was a kid. And that's the time I saw Nazareth, the only time. Did I tell you my Nazareth story in the late 80s?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll say this really brief. They played a place called the Button South. It's a club. I don't know. It might have been 89, maybe even early 90s. I can't remember. And we went, and when we got there, it says, oh, no, they're not playing. It's canceled. I was like, oh, damn. So we went in anywhere, and who's there at the bar drinking? The members of Nazareth. They were there. So I bought that, Malice in Wonderland, and I have a stack of vinyls right here and some CDs that my friend Joseph Staub, who's a huge Nazareth fan, bought me some Nazareth CDs, ones I don't own. And I got to tell you, like, every album I've listened to, I don't think there's like a bad album, at least the ones I own. And when you touch upon each album, I'll tell you which ones I have. But, Robert, before we get into Nazareth, you have a Davide Lee Roth story to tell me.
I do have a Davide Lee Roth story to tell you.
I'd love to hear this.
Okay, so just a little bit of background on this, just to get everybody up to speed. I think everyone knows that David's first solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile, came out in 1986.
Yes.
What some people don't know is that in 1986 there was also a Spanish language version released.
Yeah, I have it on vinyl, Sonrisa Salvaje.
Right. And even in the States and in Canada, the single for Going Crazy off of Eat 'Em and Smile, as the B-side, used the Spanish version, Loco del Calor.
Yeah.
So even if you couldn't get the Spanish album, you could get that one song. Anyway, so that's a little bit of background because that's related to this. And then what really kicks it off is that in December 2006, there was a 2-part episode of the TV show called My Name is Earl. And in that episode, they played the Spanish language versions of Tobacco Road and That's Life. So that's our background. So flash forward to September 2007. I was at work managing a record store in downtown Toronto. Early Saturday morning, not really much happening yet. The downtown core, pretty quiet. And the store had windows facing the street. And in those windows, we had shelves with like rock memorabilia stuff. So like a Stones ashtray and AC/DC alarm clock and just different stuff like that. So I happened to just look towards the window and I see this tiny face looking at the different rock memorabilia in the window. And he's kind of got a green military style cap pulled down real low, sunglasses. So really all I could see was his nose and this very thin-lipped mouth. And I thought, who is that? I know that face somehow. So he left. He started walking down the street, and I came out from behind the cash desk, and I looked down the street, and there's this huge bodyguard, like just a massive guy walking, and next to it, it's this little skinny guy, like skipping down the street and kind of like clicking his heels and stuff. And right then I knew, I'm like, that's Dave Roth. So I grabbed one of my employees who I knew was a fan, just yanked her by the arm, and we take off after him. So we catch up to him right away, and she's just stunned. She can't talk. But I start just telling him, hey, I'm a huge fan. I saw Van Halen in '84. I saw you on the Skyscraper tour, one of my favorite shows. And he's not really too interested. He's smiling and he's laughing and stuff. And then he goes, so what's the deal? You want tickets? And I thought, wow, that's great. So he tells the guy to bring out his little notepad to take our. He goes, how many tickets do we need? And I didn't want to seem greedy, so I said, well, we'll just take a pair. That's fine. And he says, are you sleeping with her? And I went, no, I'm not. He goes, okay, so you get 2 tickets and you bring who you're sleeping with, and she gets 2 tickets and she brings who she's sleeping with. And he's laughing louder than any of us. Like even the bodyguard guy, he's kind of laughing a bit, but Dave is laughing the most. This is like 9:25 in the morning or something on a Saturday in September. And like I said, the store's right downtown Toronto, which is mostly businesses, so people aren't really out and about. There's no one around. It's deserted. So then I figured I have to ask him about this "my name is Earl" thing. So I did. I just asked, how did a couple of your Spanish language songs end up in a TV show? And he goes, oh, all the TV writers and producers are Van Halen fans. I go, yeah, I guess, but like, is there something more to it? Like, do you know the guys who star in it, or did they contact you? Or I thought that there was a story there. And he just keeps saying, no, wherever you go, there's Van Halen fans. And he said, when we go across the border, border security comes on the bus because they want autographs. I go, okay. And then, and this is where he knocks it out of the park. So, so he's just riffing on this thing about that everyone is a Van Halen fan. I should have brought up at the time, yeah, but I'm talking about 2 songs off your solo album, right. So it's not even Van Halen related, really. So he says, do you know that over half the inmates in the U.S. penitentiary system are Van Halen fans? And I'm like, well, no, how would I know that? He says, and did you know that over half the guards in the U.S. penitentiary system are Van Halen fans? I go, no, not really. So you know what that means? If your job involves bringing a gun to work, you're probably a Van Halen fan.
That's classic Dave right there. And I'm sure he laughed his ass off when he said that.
Oh, he was laughing like crazy. I mean, so was I, but he loved that. And I guess about 6 months after that or so, I posted that story on a Van Halen message board, and somebody said, if that's true, why did you wait so long to post it? And my response was just, well, you must know it's true, because if you know the way that he talks, that's the kind of thing he would say. I'm not smart enough to come up with that.
Yeah. No, it's total Dave. It's total Dave.
Yeah, you can believe that he said that. So the concert was October 7th, 2007. There were killer seats. And I kept thinking that when he came over to the side that he was looking at me and waving and stuff, and I'm sure he wasn't. But just a fantastic experience to not only meet him and get tickets from him, but that he was like doing stand-up on the corner of, Yonge Street and wherever, downtown Toronto, first thing in the morning on a Saturday.
That's a wild story, man. So that was 2007. That's when Van Halen first got together.
That's right. It was the first reunion tour.
I thought he sounded so good on that tour. It just went downhill after that, but he was great. Eddie wasn't that great, and then they switched. Like the next tour, like Dave wasn't too great, and Eddie was fucking on it.
Yeah, they did 2 shows in Toronto, and I ended up going to both. The first one was the one that Dave gave me the tickets, and then the second one, a friend bought tickets somewhere, and I loved both shows. It was great seeing those guys together on stage again, and just fantastic. I love the set list. I love everything about it.
Oh, that was
great time.
Amazing set list. That was all pretty much nostalgia, and they had no new record. And,
right.
It was fucking awesome. Well, man, thanks for sharing that story. I loved it. That was fucking awesome. Total Dave.
Yeah.
I never got to meet him. He lived in South Beach, that's where I live. And
right.
I've had several of my friends bump into him. I never got to meet him, And what do you call? He's known to like nose candy, and I know this for sure because I had a roommate for a little while that her ex-husband owned a cigar shop that Dave would always frequent. And she showed me a picture of her and Dave, and there was a little residue on his nose in that picture. And he's all smiling, happy, and she was like, he was very greedy with the blow. But, all right, man. Well, thanks. Now let's move on to Nazareth, man. I mean, Robert, you wrote a damn book about it. I want you to educate me and get me more into this band because I love them. And also, just to tell you my little history, I did see Nazareth on the Malice in Wonderland tour in 1980. And it was the only show, it was the first show I saw with Pyro. And it was fucking awesome, and Blackfoot opened, and it was a great, great show. And, but, when I was a little kid, I owned, what was it called? Hot Tracks, the greatest hits?
Oh, yeah, with that yellow face on the front.
Yeah, I owned that as a kid. And Hair of the Dog and Show No Mercy. I'm sorry, Expect No Mercy. And then, Hair of the Dog. But then, as years and years have gone by, I accumulated a couple here. And like I said, thanks to Joseph Staub, I got a couple, these CDs that some of them even brought 2 albums on it. And I also have a CD here called Classics Volume 16, which is another compilation.
Is that purple one?
Yes, it is. Yeah, kind of like a dark blue, purple. Yeah, more blue than purple. But there's a handful of songs that I absolutely love from this band, and I will tell you one album that I purchased maybe like 4 years ago that, God, it's probably the one I play the most. I really love, and you even told because you were on the Rock and Metal Combat podcast, and that was my pick of the week, and I think you did say something like that was your favorite or one of your favorites. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So
sure.
So first, tell me before we get into this. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I'd been I had my website for a few years of album reviews and cult movie reviews and stuff like that, and I was just always trying to figure out a way that I could do something more like that. And it was really my friend Martin Popoff, who's written like 80 books about rock and metal and Dio and Sabbath and Scorpions and everything, that we were talking one day, and he had read a piece on my website that was about the Kiss Destroyer album, and he said, wow, there's some stuff in there that I didn't know. And like Martin knows a lot, like he's a really smart guy. So he said, are there other bands that you know that much about that you could talk about all their albums with that much detail? So I started thinking about it and looking at my collection, and the first band I thought about writing about was Cheap Trick, actually.
Right.
And then when I kind of realized, wait a sec, Mike Hayes wrote that book years ago, and it's really good, and I can't really, do anything near that. So my second choice was Nazareth, and it was only after the Nazareth book came out, or I guess before it came out, that I realized that I had my own template and my own style of looking at the albums that it was different enough from Mike's book that, of course, my second book, as you know, I did write a book about Cheap Trick.
Yes, which I've been taking notes on my Cheap Trick Tube YouTube page. I've been reviewing the albums, and I use a little of your notes. I use a little audio book, so, you know, if you guys want... It's an excellent book, by the way. And the Nazareth I haven't cracked open yet because, oh, man, I don't want to talk about my personal shit, you know. I got a lot of crap going on at the moment. But, you know, when I have a little time to kick back, I do want to go headlong into this. But I'm glad I have you here so I can hear your take on the discography before I crack open the book.
Sure, yeah.
But how did you discover Nazareth? Do you remember, like, the first song it was or the first album?
Not really. I mean, Nazareth, Canada was always a really big market for them, especially in the 70s. So when I was growing up in the mid to late 70s, Nazareth were just a part of life. I mean, they were played on the radio up here all the time. They toured arenas here in 1977 on the Expect No Mercy tour. They did like an arena tour coast to coast. It started in Halifax and went all the way to Vancouver Island. So they were really big up here. They were playing like the Montreal Forum, and they were playing Maple Leaf Gardens like as headliners. So Nazareth were just always around for me. They're like, you heard them on the radio more than you heard Kiss, or, you know, maybe not as much as Aerosmith, but they were just Canada's kind of rock band. There's a lot of British people that live in Canada, and we are a British colony. There's a lot of people from Scotland that live in Canada. So Nazareth were just a part. They recorded a whole bunch of their albums in Canada. So I don't remember a time when I wasn't a Nazareth fan. They've just always been there for me.
So, and another little side note, I noticed you met Dan McCafferty and him holding the book. How'd that happen?
Shortly after, well, there's two parts to that, I guess. Shortly after the book came out, I was at work, and a friend of mine, like an online friend who had kind of helped with the book a little bit just because he was a huge fan, named Nick. Nick sent me a message through Facebook, and he said, right away, you got to, go to the Nazareth. I don't know if it was the official page or if it was Dan's fan page or something, but he said, you got to go to this page right away. And I was kind of busy at work, but I thought, well, if Nick says I got to do this, I better do it. And there was a picture of Dan holding the book. And I never asked him where he got it or who sent it to him. I know that I didn't. So that was a great, great thrill to see just a picture of Dan McCafferty holding the book. It was fantastic. Yeah. But once the book came out and I got to spend some time with the band whenever they come to town, they know of it. So last September of 2018, I got remarried, and for our honeymoon we went to Scotland, and we kind of arranged it ahead of time. That I said I definitely have to go to Dunfermline. I just want to kind of walk the streets that I know these guys grew up in and just see some of the sights and just check it out while I'm over there. But I kind of made a few calls and sent a few emails to some different people just to throw it out there that I was going to be in town and I'd love to say hi to Dan and have a chat. So we arranged it, and we met him at kind of a local pub that I guess he used to hang out at a lot. I don't know if he hangs out there quite as much now, but we met him at this pub, and we spent at least 2 hours with him just talking over drinks and talking about Nazareth, and he had questions for me about the book, and anytime I went to the washroom, he had questions for my wife about, why were we in Scotland and what were we planning on seeing, and it was really neat to see him interacting with her. Just a fantastic afternoon to actually kind of meet him on that level. I'd met the whole band years ago after a concert, but that's a different context. That's these rock gods, and I'm like this sniveling like little fan asking for an autograph or something. This was different. This was Dan and I kind of seeing eye to eye and being on the same page. Just it's more of a social hanging out. It's not a band fan kind of interaction, and it was just wonderful. It was fantastic. Dream come true.
That is awesome, man. That's amazing. And so let's get into the discography. The first album obviously is the self-titled Nazareth album. which I've heard for the first time today, and honestly, I was blown away by it. Especially that first track, Witch Doctor Woman. You know, it's the first time I heard that today. I was like, man, that's a good track. But it does have like its light and shades, and I loved it all. Well, what do you think of the first one?
I like it a lot. It for a debut album, I think it's really strong. And it does show the different styles that they were playing with at the time, because at times it might get a little folky, little even a bit of acid rock. You know, Morning Dew has that long intro where they just kind of keep repeating and like the bass is thumping along. I think it's a great introduction to the band. I would I don't know, I probably wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, but I'd rate it pretty high. I think it's a great record. If you're only going to have, say, 10 Nazareth albums, that one would probably have to be on the list.
Nice. What was the follow-up to that one?
The second album is called Exercises.
Okay, that one I don't own, so educate me.
Exercises is one where they do take a bit of a step back, and it's more a mix of kind of folk, maybe acoustic country. There isn't really a single hard rock song on it. Most of it is very light, like I say, very folky. There's a couple of songs with string sections. So it's different. It stands out a little bit as being a little bit different, but I like it a lot. I think it's interesting. It's just it does deviate from the path of becoming our hard rock heroes.
Right. Yeah, because I've not heard that one, so I have no. You know, I'll give my little synopsis when we get to the albums I know. What was the one that followed that?
Well, this is where we really kick things into high gear, because the next one is the first album that Roger Glover produced, and it's Razama-Snaz.
Ah, that one I own. Yes. What are your thoughts on that one?
Great record. To some people, it's almost kind of considered the debut album, you know, because it's really where they refocus themselves as really making an impact as a hard rock band. Like I said, the first album's got a lot of different styles, including hard rock. The second album has no hard rock. It's very light and folky and strings. And then this one could almost be considered like, okay, now this is the real Nazareth starting. You know, those were a couple of test drives. I don't necessarily look at it that way, because I think the first album was so good. But in some ways, Razama-Snaz is them really claiming their position as hard rockers.
Kind of like Judas Priest with Sad Wings of Destiny, you know? Like the first album, they felt like, you know, I felt like I love rock and roll, don't get me wrong, but I felt like they found their feet with Sad Wings, you know? I think that's...
Yeah, and that's just something that, you know, you don't really get anymore in the music industry, where a band can take a couple of albums to kind of find their style and see what really clicks, you know?
There's no more development now because there's a lot of bands that had like many albums out, and then they became like huge. But now bands don't stand a chance. Your first album flops, you're gone.
That's right. Yes.
So there wouldn't be a Nazareth, you know, if they were around today, you know.
Yeah, right. They would have lost their record deal after the second album.
Oh, of course. I love Razama-Snaz. Razama-Snaz was one of my favorite tracks. It was on Hot Tracks. You know, that's where I first heard it when I was a kid. And then I ended up getting, and I got this album really, I mean, it was less than 10 years ago. I do remember I liked Vigilante Man. Was that the name of it?
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember a couple other tracks, but this is an album that I need to listen to more. And I remember when I listened to it, I enjoyed it, but I never really... You know, there's albums you got to listen to over and over again to really, really get in your DNA. And Razama-Snaz, at the moment, I would say it's the top of my list. The one I got to listen to more. You know, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you will be rewarded.
All right, cool. So,
the more time you spend with that album, you will be rewarded.
Nice. So what comes after that?
Next is also produced by Roger Glover, Loud and Proud.
I have that one too, and let me tell you, it's one of those albums where I bought it. I listened to it. I don't remember if I enjoyed it or not. I got to listen to it back, but I do remember, like, you know, again, the tracks on Hot Tracks I love, Go Down Fighting and This Flight Tonight. I don't know if anything else is from that album, but those two songs are amazing. What do you think of the full album?
I love it. It's definitely one of the essential Nazareth records. Like, you have to have it. In addition to the songs that you mentioned, you've got Not Faking It, which Michael Monroe later covered. And they also do this cover of a Bob Dylan song called Ballad of Hollis Brown, which is incredible. You know, they take what was a folk kind of protest song from Dylan, and they extend it. It's almost like early Sabbath. It's like very, very doomy, and, you know, it's like a dirge. It's a slow song. It just grinds forward, you know, or it's like it could be off like Kiss Is Hotter Than Hell kind of thing. It's that kind of a sound, just this huge thing moving forward. They really, you know, like they did with This Flight Tonight, they take a song that is known as maybe a light acoustic kind of folk song, and they totally transform it. You know, I'm sure many people, when they hear This Flight Tonight, they think it's a Nazareth song.
I always thought it was.
And Ballad of Hollis Brown is the same thing. They completely overhaul it. They just take it on a complete Nazareth spin, and it's phenomenal. It's them at that kind of slow dirge heaviness.
Right on. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to put that with Razama-Snaz right here. Two albums I need to listen to way more. What comes after Loud and Proud?
In 1974, their next album came out, which is, again, produced by Roger Glover, Rampant.
Oh, let me see. I don't think I own that one. Do I? It's on none of these CDs. No, I don't have Rampant. Tell me about Rampant.
Rampant's a great album. It's essential. I put it in the essential Nazareth list. One of the fun songs on it is called Shanghaied in Shanghai, and John Lord actually plays piano on it. But it's just another solid record. And they also cover, this is the album where they cover the Yardbirds song Shapes of Things.
A lot of people cover that one.
Which they do it again, like it's on the live album, which is probably the more essential version of it. But the version on here is still great. And I'm a big Yardbirds guy, so having Nazareth doing a Yardbirds song totally works for me. There's also an acoustic ballad called Sunshine that a lot of fans like, and they still play that one live sometime. I saw them do it 2 or 3 years ago here in Toronto. So put that on the wish list.
Yeah, I gotta look. I gotta get that one. What comes after that one? There's a lot of albums, right, Robert?
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. And in that's the thing. In the 70s, they were putting out albums, you know, twice a year or once every like 16 months. And they have this stretch of records where there's like 5 or 6 or 7 albums in a row, and they're all essential. Like you kind of got to get them all.
Right.
And the next one is no it's no lightweight. The first album produced by guitarist Manny Charlton, Hair of the Dog.
Ah, that one's very essential. Yes. Tell us your thoughts. I'll tell you my thoughts, because this one I did listen to enough.
Great record. A little bit more of an American hard rock sound on some of it, but you know, I mean, the song "Hair of the Dog" is like one of their signature tunes. You can't get away with it or away from it.
Yeah.
You know, it's still like as soon as you hear that song. I just heard that song in I think I just heard it in like a Chris Rock or yeah, I think it was like a Chris Rock comedy or something. It was in the background of one scene. I don't know what that was again. But they also do another cover, which is "Beggar's Day" by Nils Lofgren, and that's another one that they really make their own. I mean, Dan's voice on "Beggar's Day" is just like the definition of like the perfect hard rock / metal kind of scream, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, he really belts it out on that track.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, I love this album. Miss Misery. I mean, the way he sings that one, it's fucking. God damn, does he belt it out? And I love the final track, Please Don't Judas Me.
Oh yeah.
And of course, you got to mention "Love Hurts," which is probably, I mean, here in South Florida, it's the only song I hear on the radio when they ever play Nazareth. Yeah, it is a solid album. And would you say this belongs in the essentials? Absolutely,
no doubt about it.
Yeah, this is a great album. This is one I've lived for since like the late 70s. Great album. Well, I mean, and I'm sure it was probably their biggest seller in the U.S. Would you say?
Well, it helped because originally the song "Love Hurts" wasn't going to be on it, and in fact, it's not on the UK version of it. So they added it to the North American one, where I'm flipping through the book here a little bit. The album sold over 2 million copies in the United States when it came out.
Wow. Yeah.
Based on that single.
Yeah, I'm sure. And what comes after Hair of the Dog?
Hair of the Dog, of course, they toured that thing crazy. Well, if you really want to get detailed, Dan McCafferty has a solo album out after Hair of the Dog. But if we're sticking in Nazareth, we come up with a really interesting record, and this is the one that we talked about on your other show, which is Close Enough for Rock and Roll.
Yes. One I bought in a used bin about, 3 years ago, and I absolutely fell in love with it on first listen. And this one I've listened to a lot. And you told me that this is an album they pretty much ignore live, right?
Right. Telegram is like a 4-part song at the beginning that kicks off the album, and they don't even do all of that. They've never done the 4th part to it. So they do the first 3 parts of Telegram, and they've never played any of the other songs off of it.
Even on that tour.
Yeah, even on the tour, and they would open with Telegram, and then the rest of it they just never did any of it. And it's got a song called Vancouver Shakedown,
yes,
which to me sounds kind of a lot like Shanghai and Shanghai from Rampant, and I think they're kind of like, in my mind, they're like sister songs. They're kind of related. They have a similar feel, and it's just a great song. Dan's vocal on it is fantastic. I can't imagine why they wouldn't play that. At least play it when you're doing a concert in Vancouver, of all places.
Right.
But it also has, they had a single off of it that I just absolutely love. It's one of my favorite songs probably from anybody, and it's called Carry Out Feelings.
Oh,
and it's
love
just
that
this
song.
Yeah, it's like this neat acoustic thing with a bit of a like Caribbean kind of percussion going on. The harmony vocals are great. It's fantastic to sing along to. It's just a great, I don't know how it wasn't a hit, but yeah, that's a great song. Lift the Lid is a really great rocker. It sounds a lot like early ZZ Top, and I'm sure it would have been great live, but they never did any of this stuff live.
That's amazing, and yes, and I that's one I would definitely recommend to everybody. It's one, it's. I mean, for me, it was a first listen, got hooked album, and I was quite surprised you telling me it wasn't played live except for part of one song.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it was number 12 in Canada. Like they got a gold album for it, so people were buying it, even without it being played on the tour. I don't really understand it. I think it's got a really neat album cover where it's these fans, this weird black and white picture of these fans like looking inside a limo, and then when you open the gatefold cover, it's the picture of the band inside looking all claustrophobic in the back of a limo. Like that really kind of stood out. I felt in the 70s, away from like the Destroyer cover and even other Nazareth albums that were always really bright and kind of cartoony. This one's got this weird gray pixelated kind of photograph, and that I just think it's really neat. It stands out. Great songs. It's in my essential list. It might not be in everybody's, but I love that record.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, since I don't own everything, that's definitely in my essential list. I listened to that one quite a bit. What came after that one?
The next one is Playing the Game.
Yes.
Which is 1976, and this is the one I think they start kind of slowing down a little bit. I don't think the songwriting is quite as strong. They do a cover of a song called "I Want to Do Everything for You," which they play live all the time. That ended up being like a live hit for them almost, so people would expect to hear it live. But that's really like the best song on the album. There are some examples of Dan singing great. There's a lot of examples of Manny Charlton playing great. It's just the songwriting, I think, is a bit of a step down after, what have I said, like the last 4 albums or something are on my essential list. Right. So, a little bit of a step down, but that's okay. Their batting average at this point is extremely high.
Yeah, this is one that Joseph Staub bought me. It's a CD that brings Close Enough to Rock and Roll and Playing the Game. And yes, I don't remember disliking it. I did hear it and I enjoyed it. And it has one of my favorite Nazareth songs, though. That's on the Hot Tracks. I love Born to Love. I think it's a great heavy tune. I like the driving beat to it. I think it's a smoking track. But yeah, it's one that, like I said earlier, I want to like listen to these more. I just listen to them once or twice and never go back, which is a shame because Nazareth is awesome. All right, so what comes after Playing the Game?
Well, after Playing the Game, maybe you needed the slight misstep of Playing the Game. Maybe that was necessarily in order to come up with something like Expect No Mercy, which they just snap it right back into focus, and we are off and running. Produced again by Manny. This is one of the records that they recorded in Canada, one of many. And they are back on top of the game with this record. This is definitely probably in anybody's essential list of Nazareth records. You've got Gone Dead Train and Shot Me Down is great. Kentucky Fried Blues. Lots of great Manny Charlton guitar on this record.
Yeah, this is one that I bought as a child in a bargain bin. I remember, I'm looking at it right now. It has a little corner cut, and I bought it really on the strength of the album cover. I was like, wow,
sure.
that album cover is awesome, and I know a Nazareth. I have Hot Tracks and Hair of the Dog, so let me pick this up. And yeah, once I put the needle down and I hear that title track and that riff, I was like, oh man, this is good. So yeah, this is an album I am used to, but Joseph Staub bought me the CD that brings 10 alternative versions of these. Have you heard this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's I think there's some songs that aren't on here, right? Like Desolation Road is not on this, is it?
Right. So what it is, when they originally recorded the album, the label rejected it. So then they had to go back and add some new songs. So the second disc of that Salvo deluxe edition that you've got there, the second disc is the original shelved album that the band originally presented to the label, and they turned it down, which is really weird because some of the songs on that shelved album are fantastic, if not better than the released album.
And it doesn't have the title track.
Well, that's something I was never really able to figure out, and I've asked almost every guy from that era of Nazareth, what was the album called originally? Because obviously, yeah, that album that they didn't put out doesn't have the song Expect No Mercy, so the album wouldn't have been called that. And in the liner notes to that set, it does mention that it was only when they went back to the studio to kind of fix the album to meet the record company's standards or expectations, that's when they came up with the song Expect No Mercy. So that's like the $1 million question. What was the album called before that? And no one seems to remember, unless they were going to call it Expect No Mercy and they didn't have a song for it, so then they wrote one by design to fit the album cover. That's a possibility, but I've never been able to get confirmation on that.
Interesting, and it is, for me, it's a standout track. I love that song off this album.
Yeah, absolutely.
What comes after Expect No Mercy?
Well, this is the ultimate. If we could have a moment of silence. No Mean City.
Yes, which I own on vinyl, and I don't know what you're about to say, but just say I'm right or wrong. Here's an album I listened to once. I enjoyed it, but I never went back to listen to it. Should I do that again?
You need to stop everything and listen to this. And listen to this record. This is
coolest album cover too.
This is the ultimate Nazareth. This is when, they're starting to really come into almost like a metal kind of feel, and they've got an extra guitar player involved. So it's still produced by Manny Charlton, and he's still playing guitar, but they've added Zal Clemenson, who's from the sensational Alex Harvey band. And man, can you tell a difference. Like, you need to listen to what these two guys are doing together, because Zal's not just there playing a little bit of rhythm while, Manny's like the guitar player in Nazareth, so he should get all the leads and solos, right? It's not like that at all. They both just solo like crazy, like wild abandon. No Mean City is possibly at the top of Robert's Essential Nazareth list.
Oh, there you go. So you think it's their best album?
It probably is, yeah.
All right, then I'm gonna have to put that in front of Razama-Snaz. Listen to that one more and Loud and Proud. What came after that? I'm running out of albums here, so.
Oh, are you? We're getting to the end of your list.
I only have 2 left. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so the next one is from 1980 when you saw them on tour, Malice in Wonderland,
yes.
Which means that you saw them with Zal Clemenson. So I'm very jealous of you for that, my friend.
Well, it's the only time I saw him.
So that would be the 5-man lineup,
right?
Which is like their greatest lineup.
I will tell you one thing, and you'll correct me because probably it didn't happen. I am aware the next album is Full Circle, I think it was called, with the dolphin.
Oh, right? After. Yes, that's right.
Well, when they played the Sportatorium, Dan McCaffrey said, "We're recording this live." And they played Cocaine. Now, is the Cocaine live version on Full Circle from Florida?
I don't know if it actually...
It probably wasn't.
It's a different version than is on their live album, I can tell you that. They've...
Oh, was the live album between Malice and Full Circle?
No.
Okay, so...
No.
Yeah, it should be the Full Circle version.
The Full Circle, the version of Cocaine on that is recorded in Michigan, May 25th.
Okay, yeah. We were lied to. Well, maybe we weren't as good as Michigan,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. They were. I don't think he was lying when he said they're recording it.
Yeah.
They just didn't use it.
Yeah, they said, "Oh, we're recording and it's going to be on the next album, so we want to hear you." Because there was no version of Cocaine before Malice in Wonderland, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because I do remember it was played that night. That's one of the memories, and the pyro, and of course the hits that I knew. But well, what do you think of Malice? I'll tell you what I think because I just finished listening to it the other day. What do you think of that one?
I think it's not quite as great. For some reason, and I really don't understand this, that they have all these great records that Manny Charlton's producing. Right, Roger Glover does 3, then Manny does like 5 or 6, and the albums are just getting better and better, including Dan's solo album that I mentioned. Manny Charlton also produced that record, and it's a great record. So to me, with No Mean City, it's like they're on top of the world. These guys they have conquered planet Earth and others. And so what do? Take Manny out of the production chair. I don't get it. I don't know why this formula works. Don't mess with it. Right. So they get Jeff Skunk Baxter from Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. Yeah. And I'm not a fan. I think he really toned down the guitar work. So both Manny and Zal, their guitar work is not as exciting as it was on No Mean City. There's still some good songs. Showdown at the Border is great, and they used to play that one live a lot. Holiday is a great poppy tune. Hearts Grown Cold is great. There's good stuff on there, but it's a step back from this hard rock format that they spent like 5 or 6 albums perfecting. I don't know why. I don't think Skunk Baxter should have been anywhere near these guys. It's like some of the tunes, I feel like he is kind of trying to turn them into like a Doobie Brothers soft rock kind of thing, and they'd already tried that with Exercises, and it didn't stick.
Yeah, I when I listened to it the other day, I owned it on 8-track as a kid, and it did bring back a lot of memories listening to it. But I did, while I was listening to it, I was like, man, this is kind of little bit of a roller coaster ride with, the different changes. The songs vary to very mellow, but Holiday was a staple on radio down here at that time. I used to hear that song all the time on the radio. I guess during that year to promote the album, and yeah, it is a great song and a real strange, cool video. Those pre-MTV videos I love, and that one really does the trick. All right, Robert, I own no more albums except for the live one, so the Full Circle I'm sure is next, right? Is it Full Circle or Full Circle?
Fool.
All right, Fool. That's what I thought.
But let me take a bit of a detour and mention, even though the Malice in Wonderland album, I think, is a bit of a step back for them. I do have to mention one thing, which is that on the tour for that album, they played the Hammersmith Odeon in London, England, and that show was professionally recorded for a BBC broadcast. If that had come out as a live album at the time, I think Nazareth's future would have been much, much different. I think it's one of the greatest live albums of all time, and it's not officially released. They put out like a 4-track single, and some of it has come out as some B-sides. There is a Salvo kind of deluxe edition of Malice in Wonderland, and it's got like 9 songs or something from the Hammersmith show. But if you can listen, actually, if you go to YouTube, and I think if you just type in Nazareth Hammersmith 1980, you can listen to the whole show, and it's phenomenal. Like Zal Clemenson and Manny Charlton are just monsters on this. They're soloing. They play separate solos almost on every song. Like they're both playing different solos at the same time. It's not like twin lead stuff like we're used to with like Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest. Right. They're just it's like they're each in a different song, but it works. It sounds so cool. And anyone interested in Nazareth or wants to learn more about their hard rock kind of leanings, I would put the live recording of the Hammersmith show. That's like in the essential list, even though it's not a real record. There's just a few songs here and a few songs on some other collections, but at least the deluxe edition of Malice in Wonderland has a lot of the songs. It still doesn't have all of them, but if you listen to the whole show on YouTube, and I'll send you the link if you need a hand.
I'd love to hear it.
It's phenomenal. Like in my book, I mentioned that if that had come out, it would be right along like Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, AC/DC, If You Want Blood, Blue Oyster Cult, Some Enchanted Evening. All of those, this Nazareth live album would be right up there with the top live albums of all time.
Nice. Yeah, I will definitely love to hear that. So then we go to Full Circle.
So Full Circle comes out. Zal Clemenson quits the band because Nazareth, they had a lot of legal stuff that they had to deal with because their manager had been passed away. So there's a lot of contracts and different things going on. And Zal ended up feeling restless. You know, they're not making records, they're not touring, so he left. And I don't think that wasn't good for the band. It wasn't good for anybody. I'm still busted up over it. And the other bad news is Jeff Skunk Baxter is still hanging around. Oh no! So yeah, so Zal leaves, and we still got this guy crawling around somewhere. It's an okay record. It's not on my essential list. It's got some good stuff. I like Dress to Kill because it's like Nazareth getting a little political. Every Young Man's Dream is kind of fun, but it's got that live version of Cocaine, right, which is pretty famous. But I don't think Jeff Baxter was the right choice for producer, and especially after what he did with Malice in Wonderland. I would have got Manny Charlton back in that producer's chair right away.
Oh boy! And what came after that? The live one?
Yeah, the tour for Full Circle was pretty in depth. And they recorded a bunch of shows. Everyone talks about the Snaz album as being from Vancouver, and it's famous for being this live album from Vancouver. And a lot of it is recorded in Vancouver, but not all of it. Some of it is from some other gigs on the tour, but in general, it's considered that's from Vancouver. The Snaz, they do add another second guitarist to cover for Zal Clemenson, and that's Billy Rankin. And then they also have a keyboard player who played on Full Circle as well. So it's not quite as heavy as the Hammersmith show when Zal was in the band, but it's still pretty good. Like some of the keyboards are a little kind of dinky to me, and they don't sound really kind of hard rock. Like you're replacing some of the guitar stuff with keyboards. I don't think it works quite as well, but it's still a great album. If I had to make my list of just top 10 live albums, Snaz is going to be on it. You know, it's got a different version of Cocaine. Big Boy is great. Dan's vocal on that is fantastic. It's a really great record, there's no doubt about it. And it's got that killer live version of Shapes of Things, the Yardbirds tune I mentioned earlier, which is really, really great. Like that song just explodes when they do it on the Snaz album. So I do recommend Snaz, but you gotta also check out the Hammersmith show.
Yeah, Snaz I do own. Snaz is one I bought, I don't know, like a year or so ago. Only heard it once, and I thought it was a very fun album. That's the vibe I got. I just thought it was a fun live album. I enjoyed it, but I haven't had time to go back and revisit it. But I heard it about a year ago, and I really did like it. But that's where I stop, Robert. That's where I'm done. I don't know nothing else after this, so it's education time.
BJ Cramp actually told me he only got a copy of Snaz like 6 months or a year ago or something, and he found it used, and he's like, "This is a great record."
That's exact thing. Let me look. It still has the price tag on it. I paid $9.95 for it, and it's a double album.
What value?
Yeah.
What value?
$10.
Best $10 you ever spent.
Yeah. No, I remember listening to it. I go, man, this is a fun live album. I'm really enjoying this shit. So, all right. So, where do we go from here?
Next is an album called 2XS.
I remember that album cover. It was 2XS on fire, right?
Yeah, it's a really striking album cover. The album cover is definitely, it really stands out. It's the sleeve probably stands out more than the actual album itself, unfortunately. Like, it's good, but it's a little bit of a mellower album. It's got Love Leads to Madness, which I really love. I've always loved that. But yeah, it's a little bit more mellow.
Is there a video for that song?
Well, this does have a Dream On, and there's a video for that.
Okay, because I kind of remember seeing a video on VH1 Classics for this album.
Yeah, it might have been that one. Yeah, Dream On is really important because as much as, like I said, I think the album is a little light. Billy Rankin wrote Dream On himself. Like that's just 100% Billy Rankin composition, and it's fantastic. That's a great ballad. For a young guy just kind of only in the band for a couple of years to come up with a song like that, it's phenomenal. Great work, Billy.
All right. So what do we have after that one?
After 2XS, Sound Elixir. And this is another one where they're just taking a step back from the hard rock kind of sound that they really identified with. Manny Charlton does produce this one, so I'm glad that he's back, but he didn't bring back that hard rock sound that Nazareth were known for. It's not a bad record, but it's just like a mix of kind of like soft rock and kind of pop rock. There's some synth like drums on it, like programmed drums and synthesizers. I don't know. I don't really get it. It's a little too light for me. And there are some outtakes from this album which were heavier. So I don't know why there wasn't at least a couple of really good hard rock tunes to kind of anchor the album. I think that's what the album needs.
Would you say it was more like they were trying to get like an 80s sound or something with that album?
Yeah, well that's definitely what we're starting to see happen in that they're watching the trends, they're watching what's happening in music, which a lot of hard rock bands did. You had to keep up with the times. So they're trying to do that, and I think the guys in Nazareth are just too real. Like they can't pull off like the 80s kind of phony pop metal stuff because they're not phony. They're real working class, Scottish musicians. And when they try to do the phony stuff, it just doesn't work. It doesn't suit them because they're, real guys. But there's probably a lot of influence from record companies at the time to be more commercial. This is the same year that Pyromania came out, which I love Pyromania, but it is a pop rock kind of commercial record. And Quiet Riot's Mental Health was the same year. So I think that they were pressured from the label to do that kind of thing. Some bands could connect with it. ZZ Top did Eliminator, which is a very polished commercial, electronic album, but it was a big hit. Nazareth, they just kind of weren't able to pull it off.
Okay, so what's next after this?
Next is The Catch, which I guess you don't have this one, right?
No, I don't know anything after the live album.
One of the things that actually happened around this period, in Canada anyway, they put out a 2 LP set called The Very, Very Best of Nazareth, and I think that was one of the first. That was definitely an early one that I got on vinyl, and it just kind of has everything. It's a really great introduction to Nazareth. I believe it's Canadian only, but if you ever see that around, that's a great double album for people who want to start checking out Nazareth. So The Catch is it's a little bit more kind of commercial again. This is them really trying to kind of fit in with the times, trying to fit in with that 80s production style. There's a song called Party Down that's a lot of it's like a synthesizer, like reggae song. I find it very awkward. They do the Stone song Ruby Tuesday, which they had a bit of a hit with it. They would play it live a lot. It's a lot better live. They actually have a song called Moon Dance, which you got to have balls to steal the Van Morrison title that. I will mention there's a song called This Month's Messiah, and this is like finally like a real 70s era Nazareth type song. Dan's vocal on This Month's Messiah is as good as anything that he's ever done, and it really stands out on this album because it's like, yes, they're back. But it's a highlight of the record for sure. If you could only listen to one song off this record, This Month's Messiah is it.
Right on. All right, it's getting a little scratchy there, but spotty. But
yeah,
I'm holding your book right now, so I'm following along. The next album is called Into the Ring, 1986.
That's actually Dan McCaffrey's solo record.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
So just
you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what do you think compared to the first one? Did you like the first one?
The first Dan McCaffrey record is excellent. I love it. It has the Nazareth guys playing on it, and actually Zal Clemenson, even though he's not in Nazareth yet, he plays on it. Like I said before, Manny Charlton produced it, and it's a real neat mix of what Dan can do outside of Nazareth. It's got some hard rock songs on it, but it's also got kind of some pop and some ballads with big orchestras. I think it's a really, really great record. I don't like it when an artist does a solo album away from his band and it just sounds like that band.
Right.
I think that's pointless, and that's why I love the Gene Simmons and the Peter Criss solo records so much, is that they don't sound like Kiss. They did other things that they want to do. Doesn't mean I don't love the other two guys' solo records, but I think if you're leaving your band to do a solo record, you should be doing something other than just that, unless the only reason you're doing the solo record is so you don't have to share the royalties or something.
Right.
But Dan's record is very different. I like it a lot. His second solo album, Into the Ring, is different. It does have that 80s kind of production style, but it's a neat album in that half of it is actually just a cover of a whole other album by a German singer, which is really weird. I don't know of any other examples of that happening. There's a guy named Hans Hartz, and in 85, which means just the year before Into the Ring, he did this whole album, and it's a whole story song cycle thing. So on Dan's album, they just do like the whole, I guess, first side of that guy's album. Like they just cover like the whole thing, which is weird, but it's interesting. It's got a good it's an interesting story, and it's definitely different for Dan to do something like that. I don't know if I would say Into the Ring is essential, but I like it, and Dan sounds great on it for sure. But the next Nazareth record is Cinema.
Yeah, I don't know it.
It's like from the early '86, and it is an improvement over some of the last couple records. It does have that '80s production. There's a big booming kind of drums, but it's okay. They're trying to claw their way back. You can tell again they're not really mixing in well with the '80s, but they're doing their best. Songs like "Hit the Fan," "One from the Heart," even the first song "Cinema," pretty good stuff. Veteran song is pretty good, but not an essential one. That's as kind as I can put it.
All right, so it took them 3 years to make the next one, Snakes and Ladders.
Yeah, this album is a problem because it's not really. A lot of people don't know about this, and when I put it in the book, some people wrote to me or just said we had no idea what was going on here. So this isn't really a Nazareth record. This is like the unofficial third Dan McCafferty album. Because what happened was the record label that they signed to in Europe really liked Dan's sound, wasn't as crazy about the band. So most of the songs are actually recorded by studio musicians. And they're even credited on the album. Like, this isn't like real secret information. You see there's the credits for the band, and then, a couple pages over, there's a guy credited with guitar, a guy with bass, a guy with drums, a guy with keyboards, and it's not the guys. The example that I use a lot when I try to kind of prove this to people, not that I really have to prove it, is I'm trying to find it here. There's a song where you can just tell from the guitar solo that it's not Manny Charlton. So anyway, this is just not it's just not really a Nazareth record. It says Nazareth on the front, but it's, for all intents and purposes, it's the third Dan McCafferty solo album, and I would say of the three of them, it's the least essential. Oh yeah, there's a song called "See You, See Me." So if you listen to that song, it's definitely not Manny Charlton playing the guitar solo. Sorry, folks. Hate to break it to you. Like some fans have, when the book came out, and I'd be talking about this kind of stuff on some fan message boards and Facebook groups. And some people just come out and say, well, I don't care who plays on it. It's a Nazareth record, and I love it. And I have no issue with anyone loving this record. I have no issue with anyone loving any record. I don't argue about music. So if you love this record, that's great. More power to you. But we have to be honest here. It's not really a Nazareth record. If they put out an album and they don't let guys like Manny Charlton and Pete Agnew play on the album, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
So if you like it, I have no issues with that. But we have to be honest and just point out that it's not really a Nazareth record. The record company themselves did not want Nazareth on their own album, so it's not a Nazareth album. And actually, if you listen to, you'd have to go back a little bit, but I told this stuff to Michael Butler a while ago when he had me on his show, and he was actually, I don't know if we talked about it on the show or off air, but he had an interview coming up with Pete Agnew, and so when he did it, he asked Pete, and Pete came out and admitted it to Butler that the record company didn't want us on there, so we're not really a part of it. It's just Dan and a bunch of studio guys. So if you dig out that Michael Butler interview, you can hear Pete Agnew himself admitting what I've just told you, that it's not a Nazareth album.
Wow. And how about the next one? Did Nazareth perform on No Jive in 1991?
They absolutely do, although they've been retooled a little bit. So Manny Charlton leaves the band, which I guess you could kind of see coming because the last few records, they're just not working. I don't know if I would have, why exactly it had to be Manny to get the boot, but so he's out. So what they do is they get former member Billy Rankin from the Snaz album. They get him back in, which is a great move because now he's more calling the shots. He's playing all the guitar work, and it's a great record. It's a real comeback album. for them. I think getting Billy Rankin was the absolute best move they could have done. Great record. Not a lot of big hits. Nothing really big on it. Probably didn't get a lot of radio play. The record company still meddling with the band. They made them record This Flight Tonight, which it sounds okay, but I mean, I think the Nazareth version, the original version of This Flight Tonight, is perfection. There's nothing to be gained by re-recording it. So that's another example of the record company just meddling where they don't belong. But the rest of the record, it's good. There's some hard rock songs. There's a little bit of a poppy influence, but they're fitting in more now. You know, this album's from '91, so they kind of weathered through that '80s pop commercial feel that they couldn't really get a grip on. They made it through that, and now they're trying some other things where they can show that they can be poppy. And Billy does have some great pop sensibilities, but he's also like a real thick guitar player, so you get that as well. And I think this shows the band back on track.
Nice. Well, do they remain on track 3 years later with Move Me from '94?
I think so, yes. Billy Rankin is calling the shots here more than ever. I think he actually wrote or co-wrote almost all the songs on it. Steamroller is a great song. Stand By Your Beds has Dan doing his scream again. There is a song called You Had It Coming, which I think really sounds like It's My Life by Wendy O. Williams. But maybe that's just me. But no, that Move Me is also a great record. These are the only two that Billy Rankin did. He leaves shortly after this. But they're both great records, and I think that they are they on the same 2 CD deluxe edition from Salvo. I'm not sure if they are. I don't have the CDs in front of me. But yeah, no Jive and Move Me, I consider them kind of like the second coming of Nazareth. You know, it's after all the great Manny Charlton records. These two records, I think they really stand up. They're quite good.
Well, does the next one stand out from '98, Boogaloo?
Knock It Out of the Park. Boogaloo is a really great record. They took a couple years off from after Billy Rankin left. So we got a new guy, Jimmy Murison, is on guitar. Great record. Right away, the first song called Light Comes Down. And it's this like real kind of this slow moving thing, but Dan's vocals are fantastic. He sounds like the devil. Really great stuff. A little bit maybe keyboard heavy on some tunes. Some sequencers on there that maybe they could have gotten rid of, but still a great record. Really good. It's a little different, so I don't lump it in with No Jive and Move Me because the production style is different, and with having Billy Rankin not there, it is a little bit different, but a very, very good record. Very good record. I would, I don't know how many records are in my Essential Nazareth now, but if it goes up to 15, then we could probably squeeze this one in. I recommend it.
All right. Well, you would say it's probably the best of the much later ones?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Then we go to 2002 with Homecoming.
All right, so Homecoming is a live album that they recorded in Glasgow. They also filmed it, so you can get there's a live DVD of it. It's good. You know, it's a nice club show. The club was overpacked. Lots of people in there. If you read the chapter on this, on the recording of this album and the DVD, I've got quite a few fans who are friends of mine who wrote up, a couple paragraphs here and there about how the show was and what happened and all these different things. One of the things that was neat about this show is the day before, I believe a whole bunch of Nazareth fans got together in one of the pubs there, and it was kind of a unofficial fan club gathering. And Billy Rankin was actually scheduled, and he played a whole bunch of songs on an acoustic guitar. So even though he'd been out of the band, he still made an appearance at this fan-based gathering in a pub, which is very cool. I mean, he did mostly Nazareth songs.
All right. Then we go to The News with a Z, 2008.
And News is a great rock record. This is them really back. Like they're they're making strong records again. From if you count No Jive, Move Me, those are the Billy Rankin ones, and then Boogaloo. Now we have the News. They're not of the same level as that '70s stream of records, but still now we're looking at 4 albums in a row that are very, very good. I'd say that they're all like 7.5, maybe 8s out of 10s, which an 8 out of 10 album is an album worth having, I think.
Oh yeah. Is the next thing what I see here? Is it a box set? It says Big Dogs, the Naz box.
No, Big Dogs is their next studio album, but in that same chapter I talk about the Naz box, which is a 4 CD box set that came out.
Okay.
So that chapter is covering both of them. Big Dogs is another very, very good record. Dan sounds great on it. There's some great metal or metal type songs on there. There's a song called No Mean Monster, which is really unique because what it is, it's taking the character from the cover of the No Mean City album and the songs from his point of view. But it's not just like, oh, I'm a monster and I'm gonna grab you and I'm gonna do this. In the song, he knows he's from an album cover. Like he actually the lyric is, I was right there on the cover, down with the rats and the bones, and you thought I was nice. You thought I was nice when I was on the merchandise. So he's singing about being the the promotional mascot for the band. Really, but it's a neat song anyway. It's a great rock song. It's got some nice bass on it. And yeah, really unique kind of a thing. So I think this album also another probably is 7.5 to an 8 out of 10.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna re-listen to this episode and see which ones I better listen to. 2014, we have Rock and Roll Telephone.
Right. So unfortunately, this is Dan's last album with the band. His vocals are they're strained for sure. You can tell that he's feeling it a little bit. There's a great acoustic song called Back to Before, which is really nice. It's a real kind of sweet song. And Rock and Roll Telephone is a pretty rockin' tune, lots of guitar on it. It's a good record. It does feel a little bit like the end of an era. There's a song called Not Today where Dan is very macho again, and he's sort of shouting the lyrics. So One Set of Bones is another song like that. It's a good record. I like it a lot. I don't know if it's quite essential. I might still put it as like a 6 or 6.5. I haven't listened to it in a while. Maybe it's a little bit higher. It's not a bad record by any means, but you can tell that Dan is he's winding down.
As I look at your book, I don't see no more records. Are there albums without Dan?
They have one that actually just came out. Was it just before Christmas or something? Yes, so that was after the album or the book had been published.
Okay.
And that's with their new singer Carl Sentence. Carl was in Geezer Butler's solo band. He was in Crocus for a couple of albums. He was in. He's been in a bunch of different groups. So he is a professional rock singer. I've seen them with him twice. I've met him. He's a great guy. He's very friendly, very down to earth. Doesn't sound like Dan. Who does, really?
Right.
So I can't really blame him for that. But he's a good singer. He's kind of more of a '80s hard rock or metal singer. Like you can tell from the bands that I mentioned that he's been in. Like with Crocus, what kind of a sound that would be. So he's a good guy. If they have to continue and they need a professional singer in there, Carl Sentence is not a bad. He's not a bad choice.
Right on, and that's it. That's the last one.
That's all. That's where they're at as of now. That's the only record that they did without Dan. They're touring right now. In November, I believe they're going down to South America. So they're still playing a lot. They were here last year, and they were here like 2 or 3 years ago. So they're still playing a lot. They gig, often.
Okay. Well, hopefully they'll come my way. I'd like to see it. Well, Robert, thank you so much, man. This was very informative for somebody that really needs to get on the ball with Nazareth, because I essentially love, what I've heard, and it's just a band that I've been needing to get more into, and I thank you for giving me the 411 on all this, and let the people know how they can get this book, because a lot of people that are listening to this are big Nazareth fans.
Yeah, Nazareth has a lot. That's one of the things. Even though their popularity started fading in the 70s, they made such an impact on people. I meet people all the time who they just go, Nazareth, wow, that was like my first show, or that was the first album, or my older brother gave me that album, or I stole that album from my older brother. Like, they really impacted a lot of people. And like I said, in '77 they did that cross Canada tour, but in '79 they were headlining places like Cobo Hall in Detroit. They were playing a lot of big venues, a lot of songs getting played on the radio. So they, for a brief time, they were almost neck and neck with groups like Aerosmith and groups like that. And some bands were just able to kind of weather the '80s a little bit better than Nazareth could. But I meet people all the time who saw them on the '77 tour, or they saw them in Montreal in '78, or what have you. So there's lots of fans out there. A lot of bands have recorded their songs. So there's lots to talk about with Nazareth. But to your original question, anyone who's interested in reading my book, you can get it on Amazon. Wherever you live, whether you're in Canada or the States or Scotland or Japan, even anywhere, all the international Amazon sites have it. You can order directly from the publisher as well, although I think that costs a little bit more. If you're in Canada, you can order it at any Indigo bookstore. In the States, you can order it at any Barnes & Noble. But again, then they have to earn a little bit of money from it. So I would suggest just look for it on Amazon, and you can get it in paperback or in hardcover. And it's out there, and a lot of people seem to really enjoy it. When I realized that no one had ever written a book about Nazareth, it just sounded so weird to me. Like, these guys have been around for so long, how could there never be any book about Nazareth? Like, I thought that there would be 3 or 4 books about Nazareth. There's probably like 15 to 20 about AC/DC, for Christ's sakes.
I think more than that.
Probably.
But great, and also, I highly recommend that what I have read was the Still Competition, Guide to Cheap Trick. I highly recommend that, and pretty much everywhere you mentioned to get the Nazareth Cheap Trick's the same.
Yeah, exact same. They're both listed on Amazon, or even you can look up my name, and both books should come up. If for some reason you can't find it on there, you can find me on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram, and I can send you links. If anybody wants a signed copy of either of the books, you can buy that directly from me. If you live in the States or overseas, the shipping is kind of prohibitive. I wouldn't advise it unless you absolutely need to have a signed copy in your collection. I don't know why you'd want that. But if you live in Canada, or like I say, if you just really want that, definitely reach out to me through any of my social media platforms, and I can hook you up with a signed copy with exact shipping to wherever you live. But if that's not important, then yeah, just Amazon. Amazon will work. They'll get it to you within like a couple of days. Especially in the States, Amazon seems really quick down there. So if you're ordering it on a Monday, you'll probably be reading it by like Tuesday night or Wednesday or something.
Right on. Well, before we leave, Robert, I do have one more question. Since, it is the one album I had as a kid. What is your opinion on Hot Tracks? Do you think it's a good representation of a greatest hits for Nazareth at the time?
Well, I think the only issue with Hot Tracks is that I believe it's the version of Love Hurts that's on there. They've edited it to try to make it longer. And if you listen to the original album version, then you listen to the one on Hot Tracks, it's very awkward. And I hate it when record companies do that kind of thing. The Nazareth version of of Love Hurts is perfect. You know, there's a reason why it was played at every slow dance during the 70s in North America, you know. So the record company, they kind of add an extra verse to it, or an extra chorus or a pre-chorus or something. I haven't heard it in years. But aside from that, yeah, it's not a bad little collection. But they've got lots of greatest hits now. There's when Salvo did the reissue program with those deluxe CDs that you've got, they did I don't know if it's called the very best of, or Nazareth Anthology. I think that's it. It's a purple cover. It's got the skull on the front, and that's a really good 2 CD introduction of the band. So I would skip Hot Tracks and just go directly to the Nazareth Anthology.
All right, so there you go. If you want a good representation, go to the Anthology one. I do notice on Hot Tracks it ends with Vancouver Shakedown, which you were talking about earlier. Track never played live, and look, they made it on. They put it on here.
Yeah, there's actually there's a. I don't remember exactly what country it's from, but there's another greatest hits. It might be German or something, but it's a vinyl compilation. And I believe side 1 ends with Shanghai and Shanghai, and side 2 ends with Vancouver Shakedown. So I'm not the only one who thinks that there's a bit of a connection between those two songs.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, Robert, I can't thank you enough, man. Thank you so much for educating me and the people out there that want to get into Nazareth. And I'm sure the people that love Nazareth really enjoyed you talking. And if you don't own Robert's book, you need to get it. You need to pick it up, especially if you're a Nazareth fan. So, thank you, brother. Thank you so much, and look out for Robert on the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast. We need to have him back on for something, probably a Nazareth. Somebody actually mentioned, I don't know if you saw this, on our Facebook page saying, have you guys ever reviewed a Nazareth album? They're very essential. You saw it?
Yeah, I did see that. So there you go. The fans have demanded it.
Right, so we'll get on it. Maybe we'll do a poll, see which one, and leave Hair of the Dog out of it, because you know that'll win.
That's true.
So again, thank you, Robert, and good luck with everything. And check out his books, and you want to plug you have a Facebook group.
There's my Facebook. There's my personal page, and then I also have a page where I promote my website. The website is thissideofthetracks.ca. There's a bunch of album reviews, like I said, movie reviews, concert reviews. I think I review one of those early. There's a bunch of different shows on there. I've got one of the Nazareth shows on there, if not both. So yeah, there's a Facebook page also for This Side of the Tracks, and the content there is a little bit different than the stuff on my page. There's some overlap because I should link them together somehow, but you can definitely get a hold of me at either of those platforms. And if you just want to talk about music or try to get me on a different podcast, I'm always up for doing that kind of thing. And thanks to the guy who suggested that we do a special Nazareth episode on your other show. That'll be great.
Yeah, it will happen, and we will definitely have you on. Hopefully we can get Joseph Staub, too, because he's a huge fan.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. And until then, best of luck with everything, pal.
I just want you to remember one thing, Ralph.
What's that?
That if your job involves taking a gun to work, you're probably a Van Halen fan, man.
Wow. I say, look at all the people here tonight.
Right. Got me a brand new Oakland scarf.
There you go. I recently went to Oakland looking for a scarf. I really did. I couldn't find one. I wanted a brand new Oakland scarf, but I was only there for like 10 hours, so didn't have the time. But again, Robert, go ahead.
I was in Oakland about 15 years ago, and I think I was doing the same thing.
Oh, really? It's become a thing.
Yeah.
Again, thanks, brother. Thank you so much, and thanks for your time. Again, I got to say it again. I love your Cheap Trick book. It's very informative, and had a lot of fun reading it. And we pretty much agreed on a lot of it,
Yeah.
For our songs. And, you know what? The review ain't up yet. I think it comes up in a week or two. There was one album I didn't like that you loved. And now I love it. I I woke up to that album, but I won't say what it is. Cheap Trick Tube. As you're hearing this right now, the last review I put up was the 97 album, so I guess the next one will be Special One. And it's not Special One.
No.
But it's definitely an upcoming one that you praise a lot. And then, because when I do the Cheap Trick reviews, I live with it for like a couple weeks in my car over and over again. And I didn't like that album, and it finally like woke me up. Like, man, this is a really good, solid album. It's very Cheap Trick. But, subscribe to Cheap Trick Tube and find out what that album is. And again, Robert, for the 20th time, thank you so much for being on the Vieira Vault, and look forward to our Nazareth episode on Rock and Metal Combat Podcast.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ralph. Have a good night.
All right. You take care, bro. Well, there you have it. What a great discussion with the great Robert Lawson. And since I recorded this, I cracked open that Nazareth book, and I am so entertained by it. And it's enthralling. I highly recommend you check it out for you Nazareth fans. And those that don't know much about Nazareth, I hope you learned as much as I did tonight. That was awesome. Let's go into the vault. Damn, it's cold in here. Fuck, I forgot to turn off the AC. Woo. Hey, this week on the vault, I'm playing something that I have never heard before, but thanks to the great Robert Lawson recommending that Hammersmith show, I got to play something off it, and I agree with him. This should have been released. Hey, as much as I like their Snaz official live album, I have to agree with them, man. This is even better. They are on fire. And check it out. This is a song from it. This is them doing Expect No Mercy. Turn it up. Expect No Mercy from the Hammersmith Show in 1980. Killer shit. All right, before I go, I got a couple reviews since I came back. And on iTunes, I got something from somebody called Cappies. And he said, awesome channel. Muzzy Smith approves. I know Muzzy Smith. Believe me, that guy rules. And I approve of you, Muzzy. And, all right, here's some YouTube reviews. On the Michael Brandvold interview from last week, James Ewell said, awesome, an interview with the Tool, LOL. James Dinal said, I still say he sucks. Well, you know, that goes with the territory when you're the biggest villain on podcast history. Mick said, very interesting episode. Michael is actually a pretty interesting guy. There you go, something positive. But we don't stop there. Zoo Nation said, after listening to Michael on this podcast, he seems like a cool dude. Michael won me over. Who would have thunk? All right, this one's going way back to episode 2. This is like a couple weeks ago, so I haven't read these YouTube reviews in a while. So this is from Jay Revel. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. On the Paul Stanley audiobook episode, he says, I'll be nice. Ralph, once again, you don't know what you're talking about. But we both love Peter Criss. The drum solo Paul was talking about was supposed, into capital letters, to be the hotter than hell, not the solo all alive. Okay, my bad. Feel better? Good. Next one, Robbie T. On, I don't know what episode this is. Oh, yeah, this is the Judas Priest vs. Iron Maiden. Robbie T says, Major Mayhem makes this whole podcast. I can't agree with you more, man. That Major Mayhem completely owns. Briggs Charlton said on the top 20 Van Halen episode, you left out Dirty Movies and hear about it later. I fucked up. I fucked up so bad that I'm deleting that episode and redoing it again in the future. So there you go. Johnny Smith, he just put a link. I'm not clicking on that. Might be a dick pic. Black Diamond 74 said, this is from 4 months ago. He said, Ralph Spreaker has no pro plan. It's just mumbo jumbo I was bitching about. So I cured that problem. So thanks, Black Diamond 74, for leaving that comment. And Abby and Hannah's dad said on the Vieira Voltis back, because I made a little episode saying that I'm back. The new format sounds good, Ralph. Keep doing what you do because it entertains as well as educates a lot of people. Thank you, Abby, and I hope you listen to this one and it educated you about Nazareth, if you like Nazareth. Tammy Sully said, yay, because I said I was back. And the Judas Priest one, Integrity 101, said, dude, Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, is way better than the original theatrical version. Make sure you see Superman 2 2006. 1 hour of the film is different. Wow. Thanks, dude. I really want to see that. That had to be the movie episode. Maybe not. I think that was Judas Priest, yeah. He also said, this will be the last comment, because I think this will be forever. Because I think, and I apologize for everybody that left a comment that I'm not going to read, but I'm going to read them from now on, so leave a comment on iTunes or Spreaker or here on YouTube. Integrity 101, I guess this is his favorite top 10 movies, or top 9. Godfather 2, Dark Knight, Terminator 2, Superman 2, the 2006 Donner only, Batman vs. Superman, Ultimate Edition only, Alien, The Road Warriors, Skyfall, Spider-Man 2, War for the Planet of the Apes. There you go. Thank you all for those comments. Keep them coming in. Subscribe, go on Spreaker, leave some comments there, or, better yet, iTunes. I love them iTunes reviews. I love them all. I love everyone. So I will read them all from now on at the end of each episode. So that's it. We're done. But I have even another episode coming up, hopefully next week. It's the long overdue Beatles 2 discography with TikTok Man, which I lost. But luckily, I sent the episode to TikTok Man. So he just sent it to me. I'm going to edit it. Should be up next week. And I got some more shows planned for the future, which I want to knock out during this week. So that way we'll have one weekly. So thanks all, everybody listening, especially the ones that are hearing my voice now. I love you. And I'll see you next week with Beatles Part 2 discography with the TikTok Man. All right, my friends, schmack 'em a gob. Later.